Hello everybody, it's Wills here again and Pablo back in the studio. Today we're going to look at colour using the colour wheel that we made the other day, and we're going to look at mixing colour and using it to paint objects. So it's going to be looking at objects in depth, mixing the colours to suit, putting them onto the paper. So what we've got here are these three little sweet peppers. What I'm going to concentrate on at the moment is the orange one. So we're not going to paint the whole lot, we're not going to do a long still life. We're just going to look at this orange one. Now, from a distance this just looks like a block of orange, but in actual fact you've really got to start looking, learning to look. And when you look, you see that here it's rather pale, yellowy orange. And here, round here, it's a mid-orange here. But down here, it's not only a reddy orange, it's got its own shadow in it as well. You can see it here. Little flashes of green. This sort of green. Showing, reflecting out of the colour. At the back here we've got natural light as well as our own studio lights here. We can see little reflections. Those reflections are never really white on a colour like this. They have little bits of the orange and yellow coming off. Now these are all hot colours. They're all hot colours. They're all in the warm end of the colour wheel spectrum. The greens here are also warm greens. They're in the yellower part of the colour wheel spectrum. So they're still in the warmer area. The colder area is round here. Warm and cool colours, really important to learn about. So we're looking at warm colours and we're going to try and mix the colours that suit this pepper. I'm using gouache today, and I've put them on this, we've got them on this little box raised so that we can sort of look at some of the shadows as well. But I'm just going to sketch. I'm sketching in charcoal pencil and I will make it heavier for you. That will do for the sketching part. This is charcoal colour, so it may smudge up. I'm not going to worry too much about that at the moment. So we go from our sketch to the actual pepper here, and we've got to start considering what are we going to put on first. And the easiest thing to do is to mix the paler colours that go at the back and bring them forward, because we can always over mix. I'm going to use my wetting agent. So this is Winsor & Newton blending medium. So pop a little bit of this into my palette down here, and then we look at the orange. This is where it's handy to have this little bit of white under the palette. So I'm going to put orange onto the palette and look up at both the colour wheel and this. We're looking around here on the colour wheel. This is far too intense, far too bright and orange. So we have a deep yellow. Deep yellow. I'm not going to put lots on the palette. So we know that we've got to go paler on the wheel to get this colour that we want at the back. And the colour itself is dumbed down in a way by the light coming onto it. And the light is synthetic and natural light, so there's going to be a certain amount of white in there. So we pop a little bit of white in. Got to be careful with the white. And we also know that we're going darker around it, but not straight away. So let's start fairly simply. I'm going to also add this creamy yellow. This is Naples yellow. It's a new tube, so let's open it. Just going to put a bit of that Naples yellow in, because there's a sort of a subtle warmth. It's not a powerful warmth, it's a subtle warmth. They're back to front, but we've got a strong orange, we've got a orangey yellow here, and this Naples yellow, which is not actually on the wheel because it's not amongst the primaries, but it would be around here somewhere. So the whole range of really warm colours. Just going to splash them on with a big sable. So here we go, mixing. So I've got my wetting medium, put it onto the brush, and a little bit of orange and a little bit of this yellow, and keep looking across there. Put some of this Naples yellow in. Okay, where are we on the colour wheel? We're sort of about here. A bit more orange and touch of white, tiny touch of white. Colour's a little bit too strong. Okay, so let's just pop this on. Picking up the charcoal, I'm not going to worry about it at the moment. So those are the colours at the back there. And then if we put a bit more orange back into it, so we're coming round here on the colour wheel. So that is really getting towards the right colour here. A little bit more orange down here, coming into the shadow of that part. So we've got our object, we've got our colour wheel, we can just mix as we go along. This bit here is quite reddish. And probably, as you can see, not quite red enough, because I'm only using orange on the palette, and I really need for here to go into this part of the colour wheel, so quite a lot more red into it. But we don't have to rush it. We go back to here, this area. Then there's a bit here. That is that shade. Okay, now this top part here is quite orange with white in. So now I'm just going to put the palette down a second, and I'm going to pick up a red. That's a vermilion red I've put onto there, and I need a slightly darker red, crimsony red here. Bit of a problem with gouache. When you first open gouache, you often get the oils that they mix into the colour. So just push it aside a little bit, because it may interfere with the colour that you get. So what have we got here on the colour wheel? We've gone right round here into the reds. The shadow here is this mid-green. So I'm just going to put this green into the palette. So there's a little bit of green there. Okay. So now back to here. As you can see, those reds flare up in the colour here. So pick a bit of this red up. And a bit of the wetting agent. And as they go across, if you keep looking, you see that those reds get deeper. A bit more red into it. We've got these little bits of shadow, strange bits of shadow. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch some green over here and put some of the red and some of the orange in. So there's the green on the colour wheel, opposite these oranges and reds. And down here I'm going to use that as that piece of shadow. And I want to do this bit of shadow here, but it isn't as dark. So I'm mixing it back into the original colour mix. So there's more of the original colour and less of the shadow colour. And let's plonk it on here. There's a line. And then there's a block of shadow here. Okay. And then there's a little bit of shadow here. So I'm using the same paint, but that's enough. I'm not going to do any more to that part. Now, just going to have to clean my brush a minute. So I've got water. Don't need to have tons of water when you use gouache. Now there's a reflection here. There's a reflection going down there, and that reflection, when you really look at it, give it a real strong look, that reflection reflects pale blue. And it's reflecting pale blue because of the things around it. It's nothing to do with the colour wheel and the actual pepper itself. It's purely a reflection coming from the outside. And that's because of things that are in the studio. Got a lot of paintings around here that have got blue on. We've got the blinds partly open, so skylight is coming in. But there's definitely a line going up there of bluey white. So I'm just going to select a nice sort of ultramarine blue, put a little bit into there, just a tiny bit, and there's the white, and just a touch, that tiny touch of blue. and I had a tiny touch of orange in the brush still, and that makes sure that the orange of the pepper comes through the blue reflection. And let's put that on. Goes down here. Just take that off the brush now. Still got some orange in the brush. Gouache is such a strong colour. And then I can fill in this. And this bit underneath. There's some pure orange down here. We put a tiny bit of red into it. Now, a bit of wetting agent, a bit of orange, and bring it over that blue reflection. Okay, that gives me quite close to what is actually happening on there. Then we've got a line of orange in there, a little bit of red. And that goes lighter as it gets towards here. See, we're using the wetting agent as well here. And then I need some yellow back into it to do this part. Now you see these reflections up here, there's reflections there. They're white on top of orange. So we mix the orange that we want, just mixing a little bit of orange there, a little bit of wetting agent, and then putting white into it. Because these two reflections won't be pure white. Okay. Then back here, I'm doing this bit here. So this is a yellowy orange. And then that has a reflection here, and that reflection also is a yellowy white. Needs a touch more white on that. Okay. Then we've got these colours here. So this has got a sort of a broken surface, but underneath that broken surface it's quite reddish. So I'm going to use that reddish orange and mix that in. I'm just looking at the shapes on the skin here, using this reddish orange. and I'm trying to replicate those shapes. Down at the bottom here it's quite dark. And it runs slightly to a green shadow. Okay. Just want to get that off my brush. And this darker orange does this. And then runs up here. So we're putting it together piece by piece. Now there's a shadow there, and it's absolutely green. It's a shadow at this sort of level, and it is that sort of green. It's only a very small shadow. And that's where it is. But unless you put all these pieces in, you're not going to replicate the thing that you're actually drawing. So there's a shape like that there. There's a shape there. Now there's a slightly less bright orange here. And then a slightly yellowy orange at the back of it. And that will leave a reflection on the top there that we'll deal with in a minute. There's a reflection further back. And that reflection goes round here, sort of an indent. So we'll come back to that reflection in a second. And then we've got this very yellowy sort of orange back here. Okay, so now these reflections, I'm just going to dry the brush a little bit. I'm leaving orange paint on. I'm drying the brush off on a bit of kitchen roll. I'm going to put these on white to start with, and then we'll get them to the right shade as we go. So there's some strange pitting there, and the pitting is quite a deep orange. There's more detail in there that I'm not going to worry about too much at the moment. Then we've got a little bit of reflection here, and it's white on orange. So get some deep orange, mix it into the white. We've got some strange pitting in the skin on that one as well. But because I'm using a big brush here just to get this done quite quickly, I'm not going to worry too much about that. There's a sort of a sky reflection there. Go around there. There's a little reflection here. there's a reflection here, all with this sort of white with orange mixed into it. And then I've got the green here of this stalk. I'm going to put this in quickly because the green of the stalk isn't that important. So I've got green and a touch of this yellowy orange. I'm just going to keep mixing it till it looks similar. That's fairly similar for this. That's quite similar for that part. And it's yellower down here. There's dark green in there. There is some dark green in here. And it's very mixed, it's a sort of a pitted colour. And then we've got this mixing Naples yellow into the green. We've got it in, it's a sort of a shade round here, but it's a dirty green at the top here. That's basically showing you how to look for different shades of colour and replicate them. It's a little bit clumsy, we haven't spent a lot of time on it. This shadow underneath, we're actually on a very, very pale green ground. Very pale green, almost white. So the shadow is going to be almost grey. So what I can do, I'm just going to put a touch of black onto the palette, and because this is pale green, what's opposite pale green is a purpley red. So I'm going to use nice carmine red because that's purpley red, look. So I've got this carmine red, I've got this black, and I've got white, and I want that shadow roughly. So the cloth that it's on is pale green. I'm just going to wash. It's nowhere near the right colour. Just get a little bit of water. And this shadow here then is going to be black, red, more red, and white. So we've got grey and red. A bit more red. And there is the shadow, and that really is very close to the colour that I can see here. Just going to dab some of that off my brush, because there's a sort of what they call a penumbra of shadow as well there. And the shadow across there. That's all I'm going to do to that. So that is replicating this pepper using the colour wheel to remind us how colour works. That's a little bit clumsy, but you'll find that these are mostly the correct colours on this bit of pepper. It isn't just an orange glow. There's lots of other bits of colour that come into it. I'm not going to paint the other peppers, but I'm going to look at just mixing this red. Peppers are very strange. They've got a waxy finish to them. It's very hard to define the colours. But if we look at this red and then we take it across to the colour wheel, it's very low in the warm spectrum. It's got to be somewhere in here, almost with purples in it. So let's just have a quick look. This is carmine, I believe. Just going to pop this on here and see how close that is. How close is that to that red if I put that on the paper? It's close, but it's too blue. It's much too blue. Now it's hard to see that. You've got to look really hard. I'm looking at this area here, and that is darker but not as blue. I've got to get it darker, so I'm going to look across the wheel. We're in that area, and to get it darker we've got a little bit of green in here, and it's a very leafy, bright minty green. So here's a nice bright green. Let's put a little bit of this on here, a little bit of the green, and we want the red less blue, so it comes out of that spectrum into the orangey spectrum. So I'm going to pick up vermilion red. So here we go, bit of vermilion on there, very orangey. Now I'm still looking at this colour here. I don't want to destroy that colour that I've got on there, but if I pick a little bit, now you see that lift in colour on the palette. Now you may not be able to see that, but this line I've just put on is much less blue than that line, and that is getting towards the colour that I want, but it's not dark enough. So to make it darker, we go across the colour wheel, pick up the bright green, and just dabble a bit in. Dabble a bit in there. And here we go, onto the paper. And that is almost dead on that colour there, because we have a nice waxy red object. It's the same colour red all over, it's what the light does to it, the reflections. And this reflection here is dark, opposite end of the colour wheel, dark like shadow, and slightly orangey. And I've mixed those together, and there is this colour. So if I'm painting this here, that is the colour I start with here for that. And that's how we mix colours, keeping in mind how the colour wheel works, how the rainbow works. So I've given you a bit of a difficult task today. Pablo is going to give you an even easier task. Subscribe. You see what he's saying? I need you to subscribe because it helps the channel get along. We've not used many different things today. We've used gouache paint, one single brush, a little bit of wetting agent, which you don't have to have, and a subject, so that we can learn to mix colours and replicate. So I hope you all enjoyed that. It's a difficult task. Give it a little bit of practice. Pablo's going to practice after this. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment. You know I answer all those comments eventually. And this has been a difficult task today, but I'll have an easier one next time. So see you soon from the studio. It's goodbye from me. It's goodbye from Pablo.